The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Blackwood mansion like bullets from heaven, dropped carrying the weight of impending doom. Arya Winters stood in the marble hallway, her heart pounding so violently she feared it might shatter her ribcage. In her trembling hands, she clutched the pregnancy test that would either destroy her world or transform it into something beautiful. For 8 months, she had served as Vincent Blackwood's personal assistant, managing his chaotic schedule, organizing his business meetings, and slowly falling deeper into a love that felt as dangerous as it was intoxicating. What had started as stolen glances across conference rooms had evolved into secret midnight encounters in his private study, passionate kisses behind closed doors, and whispered promises that made her believe in fairy tales. Arya had graduated, summa cum laude, from Columbia with a business degree, but her humble background meant she had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. When the position at Blackwood Industries opened, she grabbed it like a lifeline, never imagining she would fall for the man whose coffee she prepared each morning. Vincent Blackwood was everything she had dreamed of, everything she should have feared. 28, he possessed the kind of devastating good looks that graced magazine covers, with sharp green eyes that could undress a woman with a single glance and a smile that promised both pleasure and pain. He was the golden heir to a business empire worth billions, a man who had never been denied anything he desired. The moment of truth, Vincent, Arya called softly as she approached his private office, the same room where they had shared their first kiss 3 months ago. Her voice echoed in the vast space, bouncing off walls lined with priceless art and books that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. "Come in," his voice carried that familiar authority that made her pulse quicken. Though tonight it sounded different somehow, colder, more distant. She pushed open the heavy oak door to find him standing behind his massive desk, his back turned toward her as he stared out at the storm raging beyond the windows. Even in silhouette, he commanded attention. His tailored black suit fit his athletic frame perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders that had held her through countless nights of passion. "We need to talk," Arya said, stepping into the room that smelled of expensive leather and his signature cologne. The space felt different tonight, less like a sanctuary and more like a courtroom where she was about to face judgment. "Do we?" Vincent turned slowly, and Arya's breath caught in her throat. The man who had whispered sweet promises against her skin just days ago now looked at her with the kind of cold calculation usually reserved for hostile business negotiations. "Because I was just thinking the same thing." Something in his tone made her stomach clench with dread, but she forced herself to continue. This conversation had to happen, regardless of the consequences. "Vincent, I have something important to tell you." She took a step closer, holding the pregnancy test behind her back like a secret weapon. "Something that changes everything between us." His laugh was sharp and humorless, cutting through the air like a blade. "Changes everything?" "Arya, let me save you the trouble of whatever dramatic speech you've prepared." He moved around the desk with predatory grace, each step deliberate and menacing. "I know exactly what you're going to say. The devastating revelation you do." Hope flickered in her chest like a candle in the wind. Maybe he had figured it out on his own. Maybe he was as excited about their future as she dared to hope. Of course, Vincent's smile was cruel and calculating. "You're going to tell me you're pregnant, hoping to trap me into marriage with some sob story about love and responsibility?" His green eyes glittered with malice. "Did you really think I wouldn't see this coming?" The words hit her like physical blows, each syllable designed to wound. Arya staggered backward as if he had actually struck her. "Trap you? Are you talking about, please?" He circled her like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Spare me the innocent act. You're a smart woman, Arya. Too smart to accidentally get pregnant unless it served a purpose." His voice dripped with contempt. "Let me guess. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Waiting for the perfect moment to spring your little surprise?" "That's not true." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until she understood how the man who had held her tenderly just days ago could transform into this cold stranger. "Vincent, I love you. What we have is real. What we have." Vincent's laughter echoed off the walls like breaking glass. "What we have is a business arrangement that got out of hand. You're my employee, Arya. nothing more. The casual cruelty in his voice made her physically ill. You don't mean that? It's the things you said to me, the promises you made. I say a lot of things when I'm trying to get a woman into bed. His shrug was dismissive, as if their entire relationship meant nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. Surely you're not naive enough to believe every sweet word whispered in the dark. The final confrontation, Arya felt something fundamental break inside her chest. Like a dam giving way to a flood of pain so intense it took her breath away. But alongside the devastation came something else, something harder and more dangerous. Rage. I am pregnant, she said quietly, pulling the test from behind her back and placing it on his desk, like evidence in a trial. And it's yours. Vincent barely glanced at the plastic stick before pushing it away with the tip of his pen, as if touching it might contaminate him. Prove it what? Prove it's mine? His smile was arctic, because as far as I'm concerned, you could have been. Sleeping with half the city. After all, if you're willing to seduce your boss for money, who knows what other arrangements you might have. The insult hit her like a slap across the face. Arya had been with exactly 3 men in her entire life, and Vincent was the only one who had ever made her feel truly alive. The suggestion that she was some kind of opportunistic seductress was so far from the truth, it would have been laughable if it weren't so devastating. How can you say that to me? Her voice broke despite her best efforts to remain strong. After everything we've shared, after all the nights you told me I was special, that what we had was different. You were different, Vincent agreed, his tone conversational and cruel. Most women of your class know better than to reach above their station. He moved to his desk and pulled out his checkbook with theatrical flair. But I'm not without mercy. Name your price. My price? Arya stared at him in shock. For the abortion. And for your silence. He began writing with swift, efficient strokes. 50,000 should be more than enough to handle your little problem and provide a comfortable start somewhere far from here. The word abortion hit her like a physical blow. Arya's hands moved instinctively to her still flat stomach, protective and fierce. You want me to kill our baby? I want you to handle your mistake? Vincent tore the check from the book and held it out to her like a peace offering. Consider it severance pay for services rendered. Services rendered. The phrase ignited something, primal and furious in her chest. Is that what you call 8 months of running your life? Managing your schedule? Covering for your mistakes? Is that what you call the nights I spent in your arms? Believing you cared about me? I call it exactly what it was. A convenient arrangement that's now become inconvenient. Vincent's patience was clearly wearing thin, his mask of civility beginning to slip. Take the money, Arya. It's more than you'll see in 5 years of honest work. The point of no return, and if I refuse? She asked, though she already knew she would never take his blood money. Vincent's expression turned genuinely dangerous. For the first time since the conversation began, then you'll discover exactly how ruthless the Blackwood family can be when someone threatens our interests. He picked up his phone with deliberate slowness. I have lawyers who specialize in destroying people who try to extort wealthy families. They're very good at their jobs. Extort? Arya's voice rose an octave. Vincent, this is your child we're talking about. Your flesh and blood. No, his voice was final, absolute. It's not. I don't know whose child you're carrying, but it's not mine. And even if it were, which it's not, do you seriously think anyone would believe that Vincent Blackwood would choose a nobody like you over the dozens of suitable women of my own class? The words were designed to destroy, and they succeeded brilliantly. Arya felt her last shred of hope wither and die in the face of his casual cruelty. The man she had loved with every fiber of her being was revealing himself to be a monster wearing a beautiful mask. I want you out of my house within the hour, Vincent continued, his tone as businesslike as if he were firing an incompetent secretary. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings from your room. Don't take anything that belongs to the family. Vincent, please. She made one last desperate attempt to reach the man she thought she had known. Listen to me. For 1 minute, remember how we were together? Remember what you said about building something real? I remember a lonely woman so desperate for affection that she confused good sex with love. His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. It was fun while it lasted, Arya, but playtime is over. It's time for you to return to reality. The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway announced the arrival of security guards. Summoned by Vincent while she had been fighting for their future, two large men in black uniforms appeared in the doorway, their faces professionally neutral, but their intention clear. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," the taller guard said gently. Though his hand rested meaningfully on his radio, Arya looked at Vincent one last time, memorizing every detail of his face. The sharp cheekbones she had traced with reverent fingers, the green eyes that had once gazed at her with manufactured tenderness, the lips that had whispered lies so convincing she had built her entire world around them. "I want you to remember this moment," she said quietly, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. "I want you to remember how you looked at me tonight, how you spoke to me, how you threw away the woman who loved you more than life itself." Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. "Because someday, Vincent Blackwood, you're going to realize what you lost, and when that day comes, it will be too late. The only thing I'll regret is wasting 8 months on someone so far beneath my notice." Vincent had already turned away, dismissing her as if she had never existed. "Get her out of here." As the security guards gently but firmly escorted her from the room, Arya took one last look at the man who had destroyed her world with such casual efficiency. He was already back at his desk, acting as if the conversation had never happened, as if she had never meant anything to him at all. But in that final glance, she saw something flicker across his features. Was it regret? Doubt? Pain? The emotion disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it, but it gave her something to hold on to as they led her away from the only home she had known for months. The mansion doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving her alone in the storm with nothing but the clothes on her back and a baby growing inside her. As she walked down the long driveway in the pouring rain, something dark and powerful began to grow in her chest alongside the grief. Vincent Blackwood thought he had destroyed her tonight. He believed he had crushed her spirit so completely that she would simply disappear from his life like a bad dream. But he was wrong. Arya Winters was stronger than he had ever imagined, and she was about to prove that some betrayals come with a price no amount of money could ever pay. The broken woman walking away in the rain would not be the same person who eventually returned, and when she did come back into Vincent's life, she would make sure he understood exactly what his cruelty had cost him. The war had begun tonight. Vincent Blackwood had no idea he had just created his own destruction. 3 months had passed since that devastating night at the Blackwood mansion, and Arya Winters found herself living a nightmare she could never have imagined. The luxury apartment she had rented with her assistant's salary was long gone, along with her savings, her dignity, and nearly her will to survive. Now she sat in her battered Honda Civic in a Walmart parking lot, counting the crumpled bills in her wallet for the 5th time that day. $37.16. That was all that stood between her and complete homelessness. The pregnancy was showing now, definitive bump that made finding employment impossible. Every interview ended the same way, polite smiles that turned cold when they noticed her condition, followed by excuses about positions being filled or budget cuts. Even fast food restaurants found reasons to turn her away. It was as if her pregnancy had made her radioactive, untouchable, a liability no employer wanted to risk. Her sister Clara, a nurse in Chicago, had offered to help, but Arya's pride wouldn't let her become a burden on someone who was already struggling with student loans and a demanding job. She had made her bed with Vincent Blackwood. She would find a way to lie in it without dragging her family into the mess. The car's heater had died 2 weeks ago, and the December cold seeped through every crack in the worn interior like icy fingers determined to steal what little warmth remained in her body. Arya pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders and tried not to think about the heated floors of the Blackwood mansion, the gas fireplace in her former room, the warm meals served on china plates. An unexpected savior. "Excuse me, miss." A gentle tap on her window made Arya look up to see a security guard standing in the freezing rain, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Her heart sank. She had been parking here for 3 nights, moving between different lots, too. Avoid detection. His small mercy was being taken away, too. She rolled down the window, wincing as cold air rushed in. Yes, officer, ma'am, you can't sleep here. Store policy. His voice was kind but firm. You need to move along. I understand. Arya's voice caught slightly. Where could she go now? The shelters had waiting lists that stretched for months, and most didn't accept pregnant women anyway. The guard's expression softened when he noticed her condition. Taking in the obvious signs of pregnancy and the hollow look of someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. Look, there's a medical clinic about 5 miles north on Route 15. They might be able to help. Arya nodded, not trusting her voice. She had already been to 3 clinics, all overwhelmed and understaffed, but she couldn't tell him that. Admit that she was completely and utterly alone as she drove away. Her gas gauge hovering dangerously close to empty, Arya felt the baby flutter inside her. The movement should have been magical, but instead it filled her with crushing guilt. What kind of life could she give this child? What kind of mother was she if she couldn't even provide basic shelter? A chance encounter the medical clinic was. A small, modest building wedged between a laundromat and a convenience store. Inside, the waiting room was filled with people who looked as desperate as she felt. Arya approached the reception desk with what remained of her dignity. I don't have insurance, she said quietly to the middle-aged woman behind the counter. But I'm pregnant, and I haven't seen a doctor in over a month. Is there anything you can do? The receptionist looked up with tired but compassionate eyes. Dr. Hayes is doing free consultations today for expectant mothers. It might be along. Wait, though. Have time, Arya replied, settling into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. She had nothing but time now. 4 hours later, Dr. Rebecca Hayes called her name. The doctor was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of gentle manner that immediately put people at ease. Her examination was thorough but kind, and when she finished, her expression was serious. When did you last have a proper meal? Dr. Hayes asked directly. I had some crackers yesterday, Arya replied, embarrassed by the admission. Arya, you're malnourished and showing signs of severe stress. This isn't just dangerous for you, it's dangerous for your baby. The doctor's voice was firm but caring. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Arya's composure finally cracked. The weeks of pretending to be okay, of maintaining her dignity in the face of crushing poverty, came pouring out in great heaving sobs. Dr. Hayes handed her tissues and waited, patiently for the storm to pass. There's someone you need to meet, the doctor said finally. A man who helps women in situations like yours. He's unconventional, but he saved more lives than I can count. The mysterious benefactor. An hour later, Arya found herself in an upscale coffee shop she never could have afforded, waiting for someone Dr. Hayes had called a guardian angel in an expensive suit. She clutched a hot chocolate the doctor had bought her, the warmth spreading through her hands like a small miracle. Arya Winters? The voice was deep, cultured, and unmistakably confident. She looked up to see a man who took her breath away, for entirely different reasons than Vincent ever had. This man was older, perhaps 30, with dark hair and the most striking gray eyes she had ever seen. Where Vincent's beauty had been sharp and predatory, this man's was warm and genuinely kind. I'm Julian Blackwood, he said, extending his hand with a smile that reached his eyes. Dr. Hayes asked me to meet with you. Arya's blood turned to ice. Blackwood? The name fell from her lips like a curse. Julian's expression shifted slightly. Becoming more serious? I see you recognize the name. Vincent is my younger brother. He sat down across from her without invitation, his gray eyes studying her face with obvious intelligence. And you, I believe, are the woman who's been occupying his thoughts for the past 3 months. Occupying his thoughts? Arya laughed. Bitterly, I doubt Vincent Blackwood has spared me a single thought since he threw me out. On the contrary, Julian's voice was quiet, thoughtful. Vincent has been asking questions, hiring private investigators, trying to figure out what happened to his former assistant who simply vanished into thin air. His eyes dropped to her obvious pregnancy, then back to her face. I think I'm beginning to understand why. A brother's confession, are you here too? Finish what he started, Arya asked, her voice harder than she felt. To make sure his inconvenient mistake disappears permanently. Julian's expression darkened with something that might have been anger. I'm here because Dr. Hayes told me about a brilliant young woman who's been failed by everyone who should have protected her. He leaned forward, his voice intense. Tell me what my brother did to you. Something in his tone, in the genuine concern in his gray eyes, broke down the walls Arya had built around her pain. The whole story came pouring out. The 8 months of secret romance, the pregnancy test, Vincent's cruel dismissal, the months of homelessness and desperation. Julian listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each revelation. That bastard, he said quietly when she finished. That absolute bastard. It doesn't matter now, Arya said, though her voice shook with emotion. What's done is done. No. Julian's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. It's not done. Not by a long shot. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Thomas. I need you to prepare the guest suite at the penthouse. Full medical care, private chef, whatever she needs. He looked at Arya as he spoke. Isn't negotiable. Just do it. I can't accept charity, Arya said when he hung up. It's not charity. Julian's smile was sharp, predatory in a way that reminded her he was, after all, a Blackwood. It's an investment, you see, Arya. My brother has always been jealous of my success. He spent years trying to prove he's the better businessman, the superior Blackwood. His gray eyes glittered with possibility. I think it's time someone showed him exactly how wrong he is. The proposal, what are you suggesting? Arya asked, though something in her chest was beginning to stir. Something that felt suspiciously like hope. I'm suggesting that Vincent threw away something precious without realizing its true value. Julian reached across the table and took her hand gently. I'm suggesting that his loss could be my gain, and more importantly, your salvation. I don't understand. Work for me, Arya, not as an assistant, but as a partner. You have a business degree from Columbia. You speak 4 languages. You understand the inner workings of Blackwood Industries better than anyone outside the family. His voice grew more excited as he spoke. Help me build something that will make Vincent's little empire look like a lemonade stand. And in return, you get everything Vincent should have given you. Respect, security, a future for your child, and the chance to show my brother exactly what he threw away. Julian's smile was dangerous and utterly compelling. Plus, I'd very much like to be there when he realizes what an idiot he's been. Arya studied his face, looking for signs of the cruelty that had destroyed her world 3 months ago. But where Vincent's beauty had hidden a cold heart, Julian's strength seemed to radiate genuine warmth and protection. There's one condition, she said finally. Name it. This baby will never be a secret or a shame. If I work with you, if I rebuild my life with your help, my child comes first. Always. Julian's smile could have lit up the darkest night. Arya, any man who would be ashamed of you or your child is a fool who doesn't deserve either of you. He stood and offered her his arm like a gentleman from another era. Shall we go home? Yes. They walked toward his waiting car, a sleek black Mercedes that whispered of understated wealth. Arya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Not just hope, but power. Vincent Blackwood had thrown her away, thinking she was worthless. He was about to discover just how spectacularly wrong he had been. The broken woman from the parking lot was about to become someone entirely new. Someone Vincent would regret underestimating for the rest of his privileged life. 18 months had passed. Since Julian Blackwood found Arya in that coffee shop, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Standing in the marble foyer of Blackwood Industries' main conference room, Arya barely recognized the desperate woman she had once been. Her reflection in the polished surfaces showed a poised, confident businesswoman in a tailored designer suit that emphasized her figure while commanding respect. The baby weight was long gone, replaced by the toned physique of someone who had discovered that success was the best revenge. Her hair, now professionally styled every week, fell in glossy waves past her shoulders. Her skin glowed with health and happiness. But it was her eyes that showed the most dramatic change. Where once they had held desperation and pain, now they sparkled with intelligence, determination, and barely contained triumph in her arms. She held 8-month-old Oliver, a perfect cherub with dark hair and striking gray eyes that marked him as unmistakably Julian's adopted son in the eyes of the law and the world. The adoption had been finalized 6 months ago, a process that had been surprisingly swift given Julian's influence and Vincent's complete absence from the legal proceedings. "Ready for this?" Julian asked, straightening his tie as he prepared for what would be the most important business meeting of his career. Over the past year and a half, their partnership had evolved into something far more powerful than either had initially imagined. Blackwood Winters Enterprises had become a force to be reckoned with, stealing contracts and clients from Vincent's struggling company with surgical precision. "I've been ready for this moment since the day he threw me out," Arya replied, her voice steady and sure. "It's time Vincent learned what happens when you discard something precious." The reunion, the conference room doors opened with theatrical precision, and Vincent Blackwood entered with the same arrogant stride that had once made Arya's heart flutter. But 18 months of business failures and mounting pressure had taken their toll. His once perfect hair showed premature gray at the temples. His designer suit couldn't quite hide the weight he'd gained from stress eating, and his green eyes held a desperate edge that spoke of a man watching his empire crumble around him. Behind him walked Emma Blackwood, the family matriarch whose silver hair and steely determination had built the family fortune alongside her late husband. At 70, she remained a force of nature, though recent events had clearly strained even her legendary composure. Vincent's steps faltered when he saw Julian, but it was the woman beside his brother who made his face go completely white. A moment, he looked like he'd seen a ghost, which in many ways he had. Arya. The name fell from his lips like a prayer and a curse combined. "Mr. Blackwood," she replied coolly, her voice perfectly professional. "Thank you for accepting our meeting request." "Our meeting?" Vincent's eyes darted between Julian and Arya, his mind clearly struggling to process what he was seeing. "Is this?" "This," Julian said with obvious satisfaction. "It's a business meeting between Blackwood Winters Enterprises and what remains of Blackwood Industries." He gestured to the chairs around the polished conference table. "Please, sit. We have a proposition that might interest you." The revelation of Blackwood had been studying Arya with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to reading people's true intentions. "Ms. Winters," she said carefully. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" "We have," Arya replied with perfect composure. "I worked for your family for 8 months as Vincent's personal assistant." She paused, letting that information sink in before delivering the killing blow, until it became inconvenient. Vincent's face cycled through several emotions: shock, recognition, fear, and finally, a desperate kind of anger. "What game are you playing here?" Game. Julian's laugh was sharp and dangerous. "The only game here is the one you started when you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you." Placed a protective hand on Arya's shoulder.
"My business?"
"Partner and I are here to discuss purchasing Blackwood Industries' remaining assets." "Business partner?" Vincent's voice cracked slightly. "Among other things," Arya said quietly, then turned to address Emma directly. "Mrs. Blackwood, your son's company is hemorrhaging money. 3 major clients have terminated their contracts. This quarter alone, your stock price has dropped 40% in the past year, and your board of directors is calling for new leadership." Her voice was calm, factual, devastating. "We're prepared to offer a generous buyout that would allow your family to maintain some dignity." Emma's eyes narrowed as pieces of a puzzle began falling into place. "And what exactly is your connection to this young woman, Vincent?" The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Vincent's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. "She's nobody. Former employee who clearly has some kind of grudge. Nobody." Julian's voice turned deadly cold. "The mother of your child is nobody?" The bomb drops. Words hit the room like an explosion. Emma Blackwood went very still, her sharp eyes moving to the baby in Arya's arms with laser focus. Vincent looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his face cycling through denial, panic, and desperate calculation. "That's impossible," Vincent said quickly. "I never." We never ... never what? Arya's voice was silk over steel, but never spent 8 months sneaking into my room after midnight. Never whispered promises about our future together. Never told me I was different from all the others. She stood gracefully, Oliver secure in her arms, and moved closer to Vincent. Never created this beautiful child and then denied his existence. Emma's gaze was fixed on the baby, taking in details that were becoming impossible to ignore. Oliver had Vincent's nose, the distinctive Blackwood jawline, and eyes that, while gray like Julian's, held the same shape and intensity as his biological father's. Vincent, Emma's voice was carefully controlled. Explain this situation to me. Now, there's nothing to explain, Vincent said desperately. She's obviously trying to run some kind of con. The baby could be anyone's. Could be anyone's? Arya's composure finally cracked, revealing the fire that had sustained her through 18 months of building her new life. This is your son, Vincent, your flesh and blood. The child you told me to abort when I came to. You desperate and pregnant, you told her to abort. Emma's voice could have frozen hellfire. The truth emerges, Mother. Don't listen to her, Vincent pleaded. She's obviously unstable, probably trying to get money from the family. Money. Arya laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Vincent, I'm worth more than you are now. Thanks to Julian's partnership and my own business acumen, I've built something you could never achieve. She looked around the conference room that had once intimidated her. I don't need your money. I have my own. Then what do you want? Vincent's voice was barely above a whisper. I want you to understand what you lost, Arya said simply. I want you to look at your son and realize what your cowardice cost you. I want you to see what I've become and know that you could have had all of this. You could have had a partner who would have built an empire with you instead of watching it crumble. Emma stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. Julian, would you mind if I held my grandson? The word grandson made Vincent flinch as if he'd been slapped. Julian nodded and gently took Oliver from Arya's arms, passing the baby to his grandmother. Emma held the child with the natural grace of someone who had raised 2 sons, her eyes drinking in every detail of his perfect features. He's beautiful, she said softly, then looked up at Arya with something that might have been respect. You've done an excellent job raising him. Thank you, Arya replied, though I can't take all the credit. Julian has been a wonderful father to him. Father. Vincent's voice broke completely. He calls Julian father. Daddy, Oliver confirmed happily, reaching toward Julian with chubby arms. Dada. The final victory, the simple word destroyed Vincent more completely than any business deal or financial ruin ever could. His son, his blood, his potential legacy. Called another man father and looked at him with the polite interest of a child meeting a stranger. Vincent, Emma's voice was disappointment given sound, is what this young woman says true. Did you get her pregnant and then abandon her? Mother, it's complicated. What? It's not complicated at all, Emma interrupted. It's simple. Did you, or did you not father this child and then refuse to take responsibility? Vincent's shoulders sagged in defeat. Yes, and did you tell her to terminate the pregnancy? Yes, but there are no buts, Vincent. Emma's voice was final. You threw away your son and the woman who loved you out of cowardice and pride. She looked at Arya with something approaching admiration, and she rebuilt her life so completely that she's now in a position to destroy ours. I don't want to destroy anything, Arya said quietly. I just want justice. Justice? Vincent looked up with desperate hope. What kind of justice? Arya exchanged a look with Julian before speaking. We are prepared to offer you a position in our company, not as an executive, but as a junior associate. You'll work your way up based on merit, not name or inheritance. Her smile was sharp as a blade. You'll learn what it means to earn respect instead of inheriting it. And if I refuse, then Blackwood Industries dies. Your family name becomes a cautionary tale, and you lose any chance of ever being part of your son's life, Julian said matter-of-factly. Your choice. Emma spoke before Vincent could respond. He'll take it. Her voice brooked, no argument. And he'll be grateful for the opportunity to prove he's worthy of the Blackwood name. The new beginning 6 months later, Arya stood in the nursery of the penthouse she shared with Julian, watching him read a bedtime story to Oliver. The room was a perfect blend of luxury and love, filled with toys and books, and the kind of security she had once only dreamed of providing. "Daddy, more story?" Oliver demanded, in the imperious tone of a toddler accustomed to having his wishes. "Granted, one more," Julian agreed, his voice warm with affection. "Then it's bedtime for little princes." Through the window, Arya could see the lights of the city spread out below them like a kingdom. Somewhere in those lights, Vincent was probably sitting in his modest apartment, reviewing reports and learning what it meant to work for a living. The reports were good. He was actually showing promise as an employee when stripped of his inherited. "Arrogance thinking about him?" Julian asked, noticing her expression. "Thinking about justice," Arya replied. "Moving to stand beside the man who had saved her life and given her everything Vincent had been too proud to offer. And how sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. And do you live well?" Arya looked around the room at the child who called Julian daddy and would never know want or fear. At the man whose love had proved that not all powerful men were cruel. At the empire they had built together on the ashes of her former life. "I live perfectly," she said, and meant every word. Outside, the city glittered with infinite possibilities. And Arya Winters, now Arya Blackwood Winters, knew that the best was yet to come. Vincent had thrown her away thinking she was worthless. Instead, he had set her free to become everything she was meant to be. Sometimes the greatest gifts came disguised as the worst betrayals. And sometimes, just as truly was served.